Hello, hi, good morning, and welcome to our morning news reading session. We will begin shortly, and we will read off a couple of news articles from the Straits Times. I hope everyone is having a good rainy morning. It's the perfect sleep-in weather. So, if you are already up, we will start with some news reading in a bit. Welcome to our morning news reading session. So, we will now start with the Straits Times with a bit of local news. Hope everyone can see the article. School issued iPads and Chromebooks becoming a distraction in Singapore classrooms. So I guess this probably shouldn't come as a surprise, but apparently it made the news. Singapore. 18 seconds spent on Google Classroom and more than 3 hours on entertainment apps like YouTube and TikTok. Sorry, still a little under the weather. This was what parents discovered about how their 13-year-old son had been using the school-issued iPad during school hours. The Secondary 1 student from Gan Eng Seng School admitted to his parents that more often than not, he had not been paying attention during lessons as he had been playing online games on his iPad under the table in the classroom. Again, I'm surprised that this is a surprise to anyone, but all secondary school students have received such school-sanctioned tablets or personal laptops since 2021, after the Ministry of Education brought forward its original 2028 target by 7 years. Online learning became more prevalent during the COVID-19 pandemic, and schools have begun to introduce regular home-based learning. Schools select from a range of device types, mostly iPads or Chromebooks, and the intent is for all students in the school to be using the same device for lessons and assignments on online platform Singapore Student Learning Space (SLS), both at home and in classrooms. But not everyone is in favor of having access to screens in school. At least 8 parents told the Sunday Times that they feel the personal learning devices (PLDs) have caused more distraction in the classroom instead of enhancing learning. And several teachers said they often catch students checking messages or playing games. Again, this is just one of those great on paper but poorly implemented ideas. Not sure whose great innovation this is, but it's just one of those things in this day and age that we have to deal with. And our relentless pursuit of technology and being the first in everything has pretty much resulted in small little oversights like these. Again, during my time, I've never had to deal with such things, so this is a problem for today's society, I guess. One of those first world problem issues. Oh, landscape. Oh, is it okay? Alright, so we're going to continue with our morning news reading session. Hope everyone is enjoying the weather and not stuck at work like some of us. Regardless of where you are, hope you enjoy the news, and we will continue reading about electronic devices in Singapore schools. Schools first. Excuse me, really under the weather. Schools select from a range of device types, mostly iPads or Chromebooks, and the intent is for all students in the school to be using the same device for lessons and assignments on online platform Singapore Student Learning Space, both at home and in classrooms. But not everyone is in favor of having access to screens in school. At least 8 parents told the Sunday Times that they feel the personal learning devices, PLDs, have caused more distraction in the classroom instead of enhancing learning. And several teachers said they often catch students checking messages or playing games. Again, no surprise. Some parents from Gan Eng Seng School said their children have been constantly distracted by their PLDs during lessons since receiving them in April. The parents said their children would typically spend 3 to 4 hours on non educational activities on their iPads each day in school based on screen time checks. These include browsing Instagram and TikTok, using messaging apps like WhatsApp, and taking photos of their teachers and classmates. Some students would plug in their earbuds, move to the back of the classroom, and listen to music on Spotify or watch videos on YouTube. Again, how is this a surprise to anyone in this day and age? Like who thought this would have been a great idea, but here we are, first world problems. One parent said her child was able to play an online soccer game for 5 hours while in school. Good job. Most of the parents spoke on condition of anonymity and did not want to reveal personal details for fear that the children would be singled out in school. Getting past restrictions. All PLDs are pre-installed. With a device management application like Mobile Guardian or Bloxy, that blocks students' access to undesirable internet content, such as pornography and gambling, and sets screen time limits. After a global security breach affected 13,000 students and 26 secondary schools in Singapore on August 4, Mobile Guardian was removed from all iPads and Chromebooks as a precaution. The worry is that teens will be able to download formerly restricted apps before a new application to manage the use of students' devices is rolled out. This is slated to be in place by January 2025. But parents said students had previously been able to bypass the pre installed device management apps. A secondary school teacher said students in a form class in 2021, among the first batch to receive PLDs, already knew how to get around restrictions. Within a few days, I saw that they had figured out how to use various chat, entertainment, and gaming apps on their devices. Many would then choose to stay back in class to use their Chromebooks during recess and lunchtime, instead of going down to the canteen to eat and socialize. Again, this is all very amusing. It's amusing because you think that people would have foreseen all this happening, but our fascination with technology has only led to more problems related with technology instead of solving them. Mr. Andrew Su, 50, a nurse, said he and his wife set limits on the use of their two sons' PLDs at home, but they have no control over usage when they are in school. He declined to reveal the names of their schools. YouTube and game websites are accessible on their PLDs, he said, even with Mobile Guardian installed. He prefers to install his own parenting software but cannot because of Mobile Guardian. Both boys, 15 and 17, have their own mobile phones, but Mr. Su uses Google Family Link to restrict their usage so they can use their phones only for WhatsApp and listening to music. His youngest son was eventually referred to a school counselor to help manage his iPad usage and has managed to reduce his screen time since. Added burden. Parents say they now have to manage the use of another device at home other than their teenagers' smartphones. Also, they are often told by their children that the PLDs are needed for school assignments, when this may not always be true. I feel like 007. I constantly have to outwit my child so that he doesn't misuse his PLD, said the mother of a Gan Ing Sing school student who was always one step ahead of her in devising ways to covertly use his school issued iPad at home. Honestly, can you blame the kids? I don't think so. Like, the fact that these were given to them and that they are smart enough to bypass all the security features is not the fault of the student, it's the fault of whoever implemented this wonderful idea. For example, when told to keep his iPad on the table where she could see it, the son placed an empty iPad cover as a decoy instead. She realized he would then head to the bathroom to play games on this device. She has since confiscated her son's PLD and is considering not letting him use it in school next year. She said she informed the school leaders that they did not object. Another parent said her son was able to reset parental controls on his school issued iPad by creating another user account on the device and using that to log in. The kids found out how to reset the factory settings, and then we have to start all over again. I feel like trust has been lost and it has impacted relationships in the family, she said. Yeah, well, first world problems. Parents say the guide given to them on activating parental controls is not enough to thoroughly understand how to manage the PLDs effectively. There are also so many permutations and possibilities when it comes to setting controls. In response to queries, Gan Ing Sing School said the use of PLDs in the classroom has educational value. Sure. With the devices, the school has observed stronger student ownership in learning as students are engaged to provide responses on online platforms. Students are also taught when, where, and how to seek help when needed. For example, when there is misuse of the PLD or when one struggles with excessive use of digital technology, the school said, adding that it will continue to work with parents to monitor their children's PLD use closely at home. I think that is said with very broad assumptions that kids see a problem in all of this. I think the school is just pretty much misguided in its over reliance in technology. The school will also provide counseling, referrals, and further intervention when needed for those who need additional support. I'm going to take a quick pause here. I'm going to need some coffee to power through this cold. I hope everyone's having a good morning. I am certainly, probably, could use a better one. Do screens add value to learning? When Mr. Alex Tan, 45, a sales director, checked his 14-year-old son's iPad usage on a school day in September, he found that his son had spent 3 hours and 29 minutes on games and 30 minutes on educational activities. Trying to suppress my laughter. Calling the device a double-edged sword, Mr. Tan said his son could not download many creative apps such as Procreate because of Mobile Guardian. I want to encourage him to draw and create mind maps to recap what he has learned, but he couldn't do it previously. Now, without Mobile Guardian, he can, and it is good for his learning. Several parents said the PLDs are mainly used for purposes like accessing soft copy notes on Google Classroom and attempting online assignments on SLS. If homework required the use of a mouse or keyboard, the students would end up using their parents' laptops to get it done. In classrooms, different teachers have varying approaches when it comes to adopting technology for learning. A humanities teacher who has been in the service for more than 25 years said learning how to use PLDs during lessons was a steep learning curve. When I started teaching, we were using transparencies. Now we have Google Classroom, so I had to evolve, said the teacher, who uploads notes to Google Classroom for her students to retrieve. A teacher who is in her late 50s also uses the PLDs for students to do project work on platforms like Canva. Has anyone used Canva? I'm using Canva and I can't say I'm a fan of the user interface. It is quite a pain in the ass to look for stuff if they're not sorted properly. An English language teacher, 33, who has been teaching for 8 years, said that with PLDs, his students are able to work together and share knowledge on platforms like Padlet and Google Sheets. This interactive approach to learning in real time makes lessons more engaging, he said. I can't imagine what life must have been without technology, but here we go. During class discussions, I may not be quick enough to capture every single person's point of view if I rely on myself and the whiteboard. It all gets lost in the air. These platforms allow us to capture all our thoughts, and they become a repository for students to refer to. That being said, teachers noted that sometimes it is easier not to use PLDs during lessons to avoid technical difficulties such as connectivity issues or low battery levels and minimize the chances of students being distracted. A science teacher, 38, said she caught students on several occasions using devices to check messages and play games. She would give them verbal warnings first before confiscating their PLDs for the rest of the lesson. let's continue. Sorry about that. I am still under the weather and I am here on a Sunday morning. What is the right age to introduce screens in schools? Some, like Miss Carol Loy, a digital wellness educator, feel that it would be more appropriate to introduce screens for learning in school later, like in secondary 3. At Sec 1, they are trying to make new friends, get used to more subjects, and they feel a lot more pressure. So maybe we should give our young people a chance to settle in first, said Miss Loy, 53. If we want to give PLDs at Sec 1, then we need to prepare them from primary school. That means in upper primary, we should be teaching kids how to use social media and how to manage their time on their devices. Apart from providing parents with guides, schools and parents need to have deeper conversations about supporting children and the use of digital devices at home and in school, she added. Responding to queries, an MOE spokeswoman said the PLD initiative aims to provide opportunities for secondary school students to develop digital literacy and technological skills, as well as good digital habits for an increasingly tech saturated environment. To ensure that the PLD is used safely and responsibly during school hours, schools have standard operating procedures and classroom routines to guide student behavior, as well as teacher led instructions, she said. And I wonder how all that is working out. Self regulation increases with maturity and adult teaching and reinforcement, she added. Parents play a key role in guiding and monitoring their children's leisure online activities, she said, and they can provide feedback to the school on their child's inappropriate use of PLDs. For students who require more support, schools will put in place measures to help them regulate their use of PLDs. It is important for schools to embrace educational technology to enrich our students' learning experiences. This will allow our students to grow up to be digitally savvy and take on the opportunities and challenges of the future, she said. Well done. Excellent. So that's today's news on our over reliance in technology and the problems it all brings with it. So let's take a very short break as I continue to look for some other interesting articles to read for this morning. Well, I think I'm going to look at Asia news. So let's look at a little bit of news in Asia. So here's a picture of the Shibuya publishing and booksellers. And the title of this article is Existential Alarm. New government report outlines challenges faced by Japan bookshops. So let's find out what this existential crisis is about. Tokyo, from rising logistics costs to cashless transaction fees, Japanese bookshops are under siege as they struggle to stay afloat at a time when fewer people are reading. These are among 34 challenges identified by Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry (METI for short) project team tasked with reviving bookshops in a 24-page report released on October 4. It sounded an existential alarm of a young generation growing up without knowing what a bookshop is or encountering new books, which it said could have a major impact on the foundation of our country's existence and competitiveness. Sorry, just wiping off the spittle from the screen. Physical bookshops are a sunset industry in Japan. Where does this link us to? Oh, okay. I guess we could read that later. Like the counterparts in most parts of the world in a digital era that favors less clutter and greater convenience. The report cited problems such as cashless transaction fees of about 3% per transaction, which chips away at low returns, and the comparable disadvantage physical bookshops face against e-tailers that deliver books to doorsteps, often faster and for free. Other issues are unique to Japan, such as pricing fixed by publishers in a policy that was historically aimed at reducing the urban rural divide, but is increasingly unsustainable as bookshops have no room to raise prices to cover overheads like rent or logistics. The report also noted that the country may be publishing too many titles per year, about 70,000, which are distributed to bookshops using a consignment system that, on paper, it's supposed to protect bookshops by reducing inventory risk and allowing them to return unsold titles. The report also noted that the country may be publishing two, oops, sorry, I think I just read that. But the cost of returns is borne by bookshops, which are thus pressured by rising logistic fees. The return rate has also climbed to a record 33.4% for books and 47.3% for magazines in 2023. Tokyo is, until November 4, canvassing for views in a public feedback exercise following the report, which was drawn up after a half-year review where officials traveled across the country to speak to owners of bookshops big and small. The views will then be used to formulate policies to sustain bookshops. Among the pleas by bookshop owners are rental subsidies. larger grants to diversify their businesses, banning the free shipping of books bought online, and tax exemptions for book purchases. Former Minister of Economy, Trade and Industry Ken Saito, who was a published author before he entered politics, launched the project team in March as he warned that the demise of bookshops will consequently result in a literally and culturally bankrupt nation. So that sounds very serious. The October 4 report described bricks and mortar retailers as extremely important social assets. Adding bookshops are important hubs that can promulgate culture, disseminate information, and promote diverse schools of thought, and thus have the ability to grow a nation's power. But one by one, they are closing down, the report said, ominously adding, we must reverse this declining trend. Although the task is not an easy one that can be just solved by implementing a few government policies. According to the All Japan Magazine and Book Publishers and Editors Association, APJEA, the number of bookshops in Japan has fallen by nearly half, from 20,880 in 2004 to just 10,918 in March 2024. So that's almost half the amount. Today, 27.7% of Japan's 1,741 municipalities do not have a bookshop. Wow. The decline in physical stores has been caused by growing competition from e-commerce and sales of electronic books. APJEA data shows that sales of APJEA data shows that sales of printed publications plunged 60% from the peak of 2.66 trillion yen in 1966 to 1.06 trillion yen, which is the equivalent of 9.3 billion Sing dollars in 2023. Pardon me. Even as sales from online stores have climbed from about 160 billion yen in 2013 to 290 billion yen in 2022. Yet the bigger crisis is that fewer Japanese are reading. In September, the Cultural Affairs Agency released survey findings showing that for the first time, a majority of Japanese, 62.6%, do not read at least one book a month, whether physical or electronic, excluding magazines and manga. But what's wrong with magazines and manga? That's still reading. This was a 15.3 percentage point spike from the previous survey in 2019. The 2024 poll, conducted between January and March, also found that those who do not read regularly are still consuming text. Through bite-sized social media posts almost every day. The Sankei newspaper said in a September 29 editorial, we need to tap our creative wisdom to figure out how to refashion an environment where people can better enjoy books again. It is in this environment that Mr. Saito's successor, Mr. Yoji Muto, told reporters on October 4 that both national and local governments must do all they can to revive bookshops. The Métis report, comparing physical stores with online stores, noted that bricks and mortar retailers have staff who put in effort to curate books and arrange shelves. A book you had no interest in before or did not know about may catch your eye by chance, it said. Pardon me, I'm still under the weather. Libraries may provide a comparable browsing experience, though the difference lies in how readers cannot keep the book, underline, or reread it. Book sales are also necessary to help writers pay the bills. In the light of the challenges, the more entrepreneurial bookshop bosses are carving out space for cafes and bars on their premises or even co working spaces. Some are holding the meet the order events or selling lifestyle goods and merchandise. Tsutaya, one of Japan's largest bookshop chains, even has a Pokemon card lounge at its revamped store at the Shibuya Scramble Crossing in Tokyo for visitors to battle it out in the card game. Shared bookshops are also taking off across the country, with the concept reducing entry barriers. With the concept reducing entry barriers by allowing bibliophiles or self published authors to lease shelf space in a bookshop rather than an entire shop. The ministry report also cited positive examples of how libraries such as those in Tottori Prefecture and Yamagata City are supporting local stores by filling their shelves with books bought locally. Machida, in Tokyo's suburbs, allows people to reserve and return library books at a local bookshop. This has driven foot traffic to the shop, resulting in an increase in sales by up to 20%. Major convenience store operator Lawson is introducing book corners at its stores in municipalities without bookshops. From now on, bookshops must be places where people can gather. Mr. Masahiko Motonoki, the seventh generation owner of Motonoki Bookstore, was cited as saying in the Métis report, "It is not enough today to only sell books. Each bookshop must have its own character." The bookshop, founded in 1877 in his native Izuka in Fukuoka, has evolved, and Mr. Motonoki now also runs a roving bookshop using a second-hand lorry, while also considering the introduction of card games and developing book vending machines catering to areas without bookshops. Mr. Seita Fukui of independent publisher SPBS or Shibuya Publishing and Booksellers told the Straits Times that bookshops must now provide experiential value add to capture customers. SPBS has 4 stores in Tokyo, with employees who Mr. Fukui said are trained to have deep understanding about books and can curate the shelves themselves. While he positively evaluated Meaty's efforts, he said, rather than just handling rather than just handing out subsidies, I hope the government can address the structural problems facing the entire industry and work thoroughly to create an industry that can leave behind a human archive for the next generation. So, with that, we are observing the existential alarm faced by Japanese bookstores. We will continue with a related article in a short bit once we have a little break. This is dated earlier this year, but it is still relevant. We will continue reading in about 5 more minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome and good morning. Welcome to our morning news reading session. Hope everyone is having a pleasant Sunday morning in this rainy weather. I'm just a little under the weather myself, so don't mind the little coughs and snorts. We will continue with our news reading. As Japan's bookstores die out, its government intervenes to boost literary culture. Osaka, Tokyo. Miss Tomoko Futamura, the 64-year-old owner of Ryushokan Bookstore in Osaka, has earned an industry reputation as the bookseller who knows her customers best. She chats with them to suss out their interests and needs, and then recommends titles she deems to be close to their hearts from the thousands of books that are stocked floor to ceiling within the humble 42 square meter shop opened by her father in 1949. Yet, despite her best efforts, to say that the bookstore has seen better days would be a severe understatement amid threats of e commerce and declining readership in general. The situation has become so bad that the Japanese government is intervening, with a project team launched in March under the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry (METI) to look into propping up the industry. It is still early days yet, but Miss Futamura and other booksellers nationwide are hopeful that fundamental reforms to a struggling trade may be on the cards, and that the profession is not already past the irreversible point of no return. Books and the power of the printed word run in my blood, she tells me after hosting a casual meet and greet event with non-fiction writer Mitsuko Hirai at her store on a Tuesday afternoon. The visitors, who are acquainted with one another through books, chat with Miss Hirai about diverse issues from history to politics. I myself was rescued from despair by a book when I was facing a difficult time, says the former synchronized swimmer on the national team. She added that the idea of giving up the bookstore, which she took over from her late father, has never crossed her mind, even as it was bleeding and her brothers urged her to let it go. I want to convey the possibilities of serendipitous encounters through books, and the value of the printed word. A book may well change someone's life. The book industry, bookstores, authors, publishers, is often romanticized. So it is that in Japan, as in Singapore, closures or downsizing of bookstores have been met with anguish as people reminisce about a bygone era. However, pragmatism and profit margins unfortunately win out in an era of lean margins and changing habits, especially with round the clock e commerce. The idea of physically buying and owning a book is charming, but for many it has lost its appeal in an age where people prefer less clutter and greater convenience. I myself have long preferred the tactile feel of flipping pages as I devour a book, smelling the trees in the paper and seeing blots of printed ink on a page that can be folded, highlighted, and annotated. I too have enjoyed whiling time away on many a lazy afternoon in bookstores, which are repositories of knowledge and vehicles to new worlds. And yet, the practice of reading books digitally has slowly but surely crept into my lifestyle. Government intervention. The challenges facing Japan are multifold, precipitating in precipitating an inexorable decline of bookstores nationwide from 15,602 in 2013 to 10,918 in March 2024. According to the Japan Publishing Organization for Information Infrastructure Development, today some 27.7% of municipalities in Japan do not have a single bookstore in their area. The sales of physical books are sluggish. According to wholesale distributor Nippon, the sales of ebooks doubled to 287.2 billion yen, or the equivalent of $2.49 billion Sing, in the year ending March 2023, from a decade ago. Over the same period, bookstore sales plunged 40% to 815.7 billion yen. Compounding the problem is that many Japanese are no longer reading. With so many other entertainment options available. According to a survey by market consultancy Cross Marketing in 2023, about 1 in 2 Japanese read less than one book every half a year. Compare this with a government survey from 2002, which showed that 62.4% of Japanese would read at least one book a month. Meiji was triggered to act under such circumstances, concerned that a dearth in bookstores will consequently result in a literally and culturally bankrupt nation. There is possibly also vested interest. Meiji Minister Ken Saito himself was a published author before entering politics. Bookstores are important as cultural foundations that foster creativity, he said in March. By going to a bookstore, one can make new discoveries and broaden their horizons. It would be a shame if real content, which is extremely important, would disappear from the Japanese archipelago. Pardon me, still under the weather. Among the project team's mandate was to consider ways to support fresh initiatives by bookstores as they evolve beyond being mere purveyors of books into community spaces with art galleries and cafes, as well as events such as Meet the Author sessions. One important objective would be to get visitors, including those who rarely read, through the door. Evolution of bookstores. Bookstores have not been standing idle. Ms. Futamura has been holding author events since 2011. While her personal on point recommendations offer added value to her customers. In Tokyo, the book and cafe concept was introduced to Japan in 2003 with the launch of Tsutaya Bookstore in Roppongi Hills, an entertainment and shopping complex. Visitors can read books for free and without any pressure to purchase them at a bookstore's Starbucks outlet. This practice has now become socially acceptable, and the model has been replicated at other bookstores nationwide. Roppongi Hills developer is Mori Building, whose vision is to build green and sustainable compact cities where people can live, work, and enjoy themselves. Bookstores are a fundamental part of this vision, says Mr. Takeshi Akiyama, who oversees Mori's retail businesses across its hills properties, noting that these are ways for intellectually curious customers to receive diverse input and acquire new information. Given the leaner profit margin of bookstores, Mori Building has been offering support through measures such as cheaper rent. Independent publisher SPBS or Shibuya Publishing and Booksellers has a store in Toranomon Hills, another of Mori's projects which sells lifestyle products apart from books. We see the role of a bookstore as a gateway to human thought, a hub of local culture that provides experiences through events or workshops, and a place for everyone regardless of whether they buy anything. SPBS representative Seta Fukui tells me. The internet cannot substitute for the role of a bookstore as a place where one has unexpected encounters with good books, and as a place where one can experience things through their senses. Okagi Bookstore, which was founded in Kyoto in 1942, recently opened its first Tokyo outpost in Azabudai Hills that includes an ga- that includes an art gallery space as well as a cafe and bar. The store's deputy manager, Kosuke Ogaki, says that the bookstores are an important avenue for intellectual exchanges, even as the business model shifts with a bookstore's main revenue coming from products other than books. In Tokyo and elsewhere, bookstores are evolving amid a challenging industry climate. Now it is not uncommon to encounter bookstores with cafes or co-working spaces, or even shops that charge a usage fee to read and buy a curated selection of books. On April 25, Tsutaya reopened its store at the Shibuya Scramble Crossing after extensive renovations to introduce a share lounge with co-working spaces and even a Pokemon card lounge for visitors to battle out in the card game. There are also shared bookstores in cities from Tokyo to Fukuoka where each shelf is leased to a different owner, who may be a self-published author or even a bookworm looking to offload his or her used books. These have an added benefit of allowing bibliophiles to interact with each other. On April 27th, the winner of the literary award Naoki Prize, Mr. Shogo Imamura, 39, is opening a bookstore with such a concept, Honmaru in Tokyo's Jimbocho, which is renowned globally as a district of second-hand books with about 130 stores in the area. Mr. Imamura, who also runs bookstores in Osaka and Saga prefectures, told domestic media, I think it's too late if bookstores are gone. Browsing around a bookstore, even just for 30 seconds, could lead to an unexpected find. Mr. Tatsuya Yaguchi, 60, who owns a second-hand bookstore in Jimbucho of vintage books on movies and Japanese culture that was founded in 1918, led the launch of a community e-commerce portal and a 360-degree walkthrough platform for Jimbucho second-hand booksellers. He believes that first-hand booksellers face stronger headwinds even if the business climate is not ideal for a used bookseller, noting that their items are rare and not commoditized. Of the attempt to freshen up Jimbocho's image, he says, think of a used bookstore and you may think of a grumpy, old-fashioned old man. We hope to make the neighborhood feel a lot more accessible. On life support, yet many bookstore owners fret that they will be left in the dust.